Thank all of you, and particularly Francis, for inviting me today. It's a great pleasure to attend the symposium and to learn from all the presentations. It's also, of course, an honor to show you some of the work that I've been doing in Juba with the South Sudan National Archives in the past couple of years. The first decade of South Sudan has been full of challenges, as you know, and this year is particularly difficult. The influx of returnees and refugees due to the war in Sudan exacerbates the humanitarian crisis and the underlying governance issues in South Sudan. NGOs and UN agencies do not have sufficient funds to respond to the multiple crises facing the South Sudanese people and the refugees. And some NGOs, as we speak, are cutting down their programs. And the looming election could potentially destabilize the country further. In this context, perhaps more than ever, creating and sharing information, knowledge, and stories from South Sudan is critical. It's critical in order to keep the world aware of what's going on in the country, at a time when there are many other crises elsewhere, but also to contribute to building a common understanding among South Sudanese about important issues affecting various parts of the country. I am a freelance journalist, photographer, and filmmaker. In my day-to-day work, I cover stories that have to do with the current affairs, things that are taking place now. What we are here for, we've been exploring another way of telling stories from South Sudan, and that is making documentary films as part of the South Sudan National Archives project. This project, I'm pretty sure you know it. Some of you might know it very well, and we have with us one of its pillars, Dr. Douglas Johnson. I personally have worked in different capacities on the archives of South Sudan. First as a filmmaker, my first trip to South Sudan was in 2004. I had a film project, and somehow this film project turned into a live project. I moved to Juba in 2010, and since then I've been an archive maker in a way, because I've been filming the historical events that have taken place from 2010, the elections, and 2011 referendum and the independence. I've been filming all that without producing a lot of films with it, so I've made archives. And I want to say that I've been involved with the SPLM to organize an audiovisual archive of the movement between 2010 and 2012. And we've done some work, but it did not it did not end up in something that would be a sustainable way of managing their archives, but it was very interesting. And so, I mean, I don't want to speak too much about myself, but I founded the Juba in the Making project in 2013. And as I was researching at the archives in Juba, I met with the Rift Valley Institute, we met, we did some films together, and in 2017 I was involved with organizing the first archives exhibition in Juba. That was in 2017 with UNESCO and RVI, and I made a film about this exhibition where we put the documents, which are mostly administrative documents. We displayed them in the market, in the university, and passers-by were discovering these documents. And I mean, in the film that we made, which is, you can see on the website of Juba in the Making, you can see the testimonies of those who discovered these documents, and they were presented. There were small introductions with accompanying them. People were really moved to discover that they had this common heritage, and as someone says in the film, that this woman said all the tribes are represented, and to her it was very important. And another one was saying these documents show that we are more united than we may think. We have a common history. And so during this project, during this exhibition project, we also made a radio show that we called Tarikh Tanna, Our History, where we discussed some of the documents and some of the topics that the documents allowed us to talk about. And what we are going to watch today is a continuation of this project in a cinematographic way, because I really enjoyed working on this radio show, and I thought that with documentary cinema we had a great tool to represent historical events, to narrate them in a widely accessible manner, and to set the stage for public discussions on key issues affecting South Sudan up to now. So the Tarikh Tanna, Our History documentary series was produced by Rock Tree Media Production in partnership with UNESCO and the Ministry of Culture, Museum and Heritage. The issues we have been able to explore range from gender roles, traditional medicine versus modern medicine, spirituality, the diversity of South Sudanese languages, the roles of customary authorities in peace and reconciliation, the justice system of South Sudan, and so on. As a storyteller, it is absolutely fascinating to explore these topics with the archives. How can we use an administrative archival document in a creative way? How do we represent events that are not documented in photography nor described in written reports? These are some of the questions that guided the making of these films. The films are far from perfect, and I'm very glad that today we can have a discussion after each one of them. It will be short, and it will be Abiol, Deng and Dr. Douglas Johnson who will very kindly facilitate this. These films are really made for that, to set the stage for conversations and to give audiences the desire and the curiosity to further their understanding by reading books and articles. Tarikh Tanna, Our History was produced in 2021. It was during the COVID lockdown in Juba. The concept is that in each episode, two South Sudanese experts or witnesses are filmed in a studio. The interviews focus on specific points related to the chosen topic, and for which the persons interviewed may be first-hand witnesses or researchers who can narrate and analyze events in great details. The other component of the series are, of course, the archives. It's been a fastidious but fascinating work to research at the archives in Juba, but also in the Pitt Rivers Museum's online database, as well as in the collections of the Sudan archives at Durham. Once again, I want to thank Francis Goto, who has been very supportive to this work. Thank you so much. And thank you also to Chris Morton, who has been availing photos to us as we were in Juba and made things quite easy. We are very lucky to have been able to edit sequences using some stunning and little-known photographic archives. They greatly help build the narration and the representation of the historical events or the social aspects that the film tried to talk about. The wealth of material that we came across during this research led to the series becoming more and more ambitious from one episode to the next. But unfortunately, due to the pause in the UNESCO support to the Archives project in 2021, this work has not yet been widely circulated. And there are still 4 episodes that are not totally finalized. So I hope soon we will organize screenings in Juba, as well as we will launch an online dissemination campaign. And as I said earlier, this should be accompanied by educational material and bibliographical references, and it could be used in schools in South Sudan. It has always been, I think, at the heart of the South Sudan National Archives project, this idea that knowing the past can help build a better future. While preserving the archives may not seem like a priority in the current context, I am convinced that working on promoting them can give hope and contribute positively to writing a new chapter in South Sudan's history. Let's appreciate all the archivists who are working around the director of the South Sudan National Archives in Juba, Youssef Onyala, who is aware and very happy that this is taking place today. They hopefully soon will have a permanent building where they will settle for good, and where perhaps one day some of the scattered archives of South Sudan can be repatriated. And finally, I want to honor the memory of the late Dr. Leonard Logo Mulukwat, who sadly passed away in May this year, and who you are going to see in the second film that you're going to see. Thank you.
Well, I don't want to waste time. I can speak quite loud. So I just want to say thank you to Florence for such a lovely film, and I really think it was really lovely to see how much Florence is able to, which ironically she is a longtime resident of Juba, and I was a longtime resident of Paris, which is her capital. So we've kind of like cross spaces. So I just try to speak very briefly and leave a little bit of room for question from all of you. I did want to say that I'm very heartened in the context of this conversation about the traditional role of South Sudanese women in empowerment, that I don't know how many of you follow the events in South Sudan, but this week there had been quite a brutal public physical beating of a woman by a public official in Juba, and I'm very proud to say that there has been a very large consensus around South Sudanese in general to condemn this act, and it's even gone up to the point of the parliament recommending that the public official behind it be dismissed. And I just think that's really fantastic, because of late there has been a bit of, at times, worrying amounts of accepted behavior in terms of violence towards women. On that note, I will say what makes me really proud about what she did is how much she really centers the voices of South Sudanese women to speak for themselves. And while Honorable Dr. Miettaux talks about particularly prohibitive elements of culture that were used against women that apply to her particular culture, I think that we'll find that across all 64 ethnicities of South Sudan, unfortunately, misogyny and misbehavior towards women is multicultural. So I do think it is important that we do talk about these things, and I'm very, very proud to be here as someone who is the daughter of South Sudanese women who were involved in empowerment. I don't think that my grandmother would imagine her wildest dreams that I would be in the colonial capital of London giving a speech. And I do not think that the person who organized that podium also had intended for any South Sudanese to be here, because quite low. But anyway, I wanted to kind of switch things up and actually ask you guys a question, and please feel free to answer either to Florence or to anyone. Was there anything about this film that surprised you, is my first question. And I think my second question, just very quick, would be why do you think it is that in many measures of progress that South Sudan has actually fallen behind the North in terms of education for women and women's role in public space? Thank you. Yes, up there.
Yeah, I was born and brought up in the South. Being a Northern Sudanese, I actually relate so much to so many of the images in the film. I think your question should not be this kind of situation versus the North. There are so many disparities in Northern Sudan where women have never seen a school or a clinic or a safe water resource or any kind of dignity. The whole issue between Sudan and Northern Sudan, some kind of parties, and South Sudan, it was very bipolar. It was North, South, Christian, Arab, Muslim Northerners, oppressors of the North, has nothing to do with reality. I worked in so many places in Sudan, especially in Eastern Sudan, where women do not even know whether they can be compared to medieval Europe or even last century in Europe, where women were actually being discussed as having spirits, or either they are witches or human beings. This has been a pervasive thing around the world as well. At the time, film was shot. So in order for women to talk with one voice and empower themselves and have the confidence, we need to have a very broader prospect in saying that women are a certain creature and certain group of beings that have been dealt a very bad kind of humanity, a lifespan, and some kind of credibility. Northern Sudan has so many pockets of women who have never seen that. You know, even now with this war, some women do not know what is going on, who the FFC are, and what Burhan and his militias are doing, and why the international community are not bringing any civil society around any of the platforms, or women for that matter. It is not that bipolar. It is some kind of contextual things, and I think that as women in Northern Sudan and South Sudan, we need to come to terms with how we are perceived and what our roles are, defined by ourselves and not any outsider. Thank you.
Shukran, that was really well said. So maybe we need some sort of South Sudan women's forum. I don't know if there's just one last comment. We don't have too much time, so if there's no more comments, we'll just move on to the next film, I think. Okay, super. Oh, there's, okay.
Okay, I have a sort of charity in South Sudan where when I was teaching, they asked me to get a sponsorship for students. And so every student who wants sponsorship has to write a letter describing why their parents can't pay their school fees and so on, and what they're doing and why they want to go to school and their ambitions. And I noticed that actually the mothers are more important than the fathers, not only for the education of the girls, which you would expect, but also for the education of the boys. It is the mothers who are often pushing the boys and saying that they were doing beer and so on. I agree with what otherwise has been said. There are still women who are sent because someone has killed a man and they are compensated by a woman. But this was very strong in the woman's fight for education.
Thank you. I don't know how much time we have, but I will say women also contribute quite a lot to even the health of the household and tend to pay the medical bills. Francis? Okay, next one I guess gonna have to hold that. Hold it. Okay. Thank you.